Well, as I tape this, it's October 2021, and I'm all in a Halloween mood. So like last year, I did quite a few videos on the Hammer horror films. I'm not entirely certain that I'm only going to do this theme, which is going to be John Carpenter's films, but I'm going to do John Carpenter's films. And time permitting, right now, I'm definitely going to do 3. If I can do some more, like I'm thinking about doing one on Christine and Prince of Darkness and in the Mouth of Madness. But the main ones I'm definitely going to do are Halloween, The Fog, and The Thing. So we'll start with Halloween. So this was the breakout film, I think, for John Carpenter. He had done Dark Star and The Assault on Precinct 13. But Halloween set all kinds of standards for what became the main structure, if you will, and templates of horror films throughout the 80s, as this was on the end of the 70s. And they called them slasher films, but these were the new monsters. You had Dracula and Frankenstein and the werewolf and stuff like that in the old glory days of horror films. But here you had these new monsters that they more or less seemed human, but something else was going on. So, I mean, it was blatantly obvious with characters like Jason Voorhees, who's basically an exaggerated knockoff of Michael Myers. And then, of course, Freddy Krueger, who clearly is, a supernatural creature, demon, if you will. Well, based on a man who was killed, but nevertheless. But anyway, you get the idea that there is this supernatural element in it. A slasher, I always thought, referred to like a serial killer, which you could do, and it would be a horror film, but that's not a guy who's going to survive being shot all the time. So Halloween, there's a lot of lessons in it just for movies overall. John Carpenter talked about this, about how, he shot it with the widescreen approach, and he says, hey, it gives it a look like it's this big budget movie when it wasn't. This was, B movie level work and budget, but he was, he had learned his craft. He understood how to do this, and even more powerfully, he figured out how to work with less is more, and you get so much out of this even though you don't really see it. So there's a lot of shadows, camera angles and shots, and sound. Of course, the theme song that he comes up with, the music, and it's iconic now, you all know. And yet it's such a very simple tune, and it's so there again, it plays into it all, and yet the film has this power to it that draws you in to this shadowy place that's it's just so foreboding and filled with dread as you're going through this. So you have 3 main characters. You have Dr. Loomis, who's trying to warn everybody, and they don't really listen to him, and it's too late. And he's the only one who, at least he understands that there is a threat. He doesn't really understand it. He's admitting this. He's a man of science and whatnot, and yet now he's basically preaching that the devil's coming to town, and because of his experiences of observing Michael Myers. Of course, Michael Myers being the second character here, by which all things orbit, and that we were introduced to him as a child. He murders his sister and his parents. He's in this Halloween outfit. They pull the mask off of him, and he just has this lost, dumb look, which I always took it to indicate that it's no longer Michael Myers, and for whatever reason he's been possessed by some demonic force that just wants to kill. And in the less is more thing, you get no explanation for this, and to me that's it. Of course, it has to be crafted well, which they do, because there's other movies and films where I was man, you don't explain this, you don't explain that, when you left such a huge void where you needed to. Here you don't. Here it's just the sheer horror, and what's one of the elements that's scary about it is that even the scientist, the psychiatrist, he doesn't understand. He doesn't know why this happens. He just knows that this there's nothing you can do. You either lock him up or kill him because he's too big of a threat. And so finally, the third character, who is basically, well, not basically, is our hero or heroine here, is Laurie Strode. And the Laurie Strode character is another one of these that I thought felt kind of, began the template, and probably maybe not Halloween was first at it or what have you, but it's just this idea that you have the initial title of this was supposed to be the babysitter killer or babysitter killings or murders. I can't remember. Babysitter getting killed is basically the point, and then they ended up going with Halloween. But that's the plot, I mean, so Laurie is one of 3 babysitters, or rather 2, I think, because the other girl just she was just partying with her boyfriend. But nevertheless, these are the girls are the ultimate victims here, plus some men, but nobody cares about. So it's 3 girls, they're friends, and the 2 of the girls are very outspoken and aggressive, and they're not insecure at all, whereas Laurie most certainly is. She's very shy and withdrawn. She's got a crush on a boy, but she doesn't know what to do about it. And the other girls, just go ask him, just go talk. Oh no, I can't. She's too scared to do it, and this sort of thing. And it's things like that. It's like the other, horror movies or the slasher film. Is the victims are always high school kids or college students, and one of them will be this shy nerd girl. Odds are she's the one who's going to live to the end of the film. And that's how it just plays out. So here, it's the credibility and the performance of Jamie Lee Curtis here, and it's easy to see why this is a breakout role for her. I'm sure it was, it's set up because of her mother being in the Psycho film, so like mother, like daughter, and all that sort of thing. But she does this very well. It's very believable that she is this character, and so you connect with her, and in her reaction is like, something's not right, and it's like, and that's, I think, also can play into the rather vague supernatural elements of this, and that right off the bat, nothing has really happened yet as far from her viewpoint to her or anything. We already know Michael Myers is loose. He's riding around in the car that he stole and all that, which, hey, how did he learn to drive? He was a little boy and been trapped in an asylum until he was an adult. Yeah, see? So how does he just... More evidence, I think, that he's driven by some supernatural satanic force or what have you. And so, but she's already, like, her spidey sense is tingling, so that's another thing that's like, and but in the end, she rises to the occasion. She is the hero. I mean, you can say Dr. Loomis is, and to some extent, yeah, in this respect, the 2 heroes finally come together. They don't meet each other until the very end. But she saves those kids' lives at very great risk to herself and all of that. So that she's the hero of the film. So yeah, the supernatural elements are certainly there, but they're kept, in the background, in the shadows. The powerful imagery of it with the use of shadows, where you hardly, and for a long time, you don't even see Michael Myers really. You see his body and stuff like that, but eventually you see him, with the mask of the William Shatner mask and all that stuff. And it's that gradual thing of his appearance and whatnot. But the most powerful thing is when he finally comes to the conflict with him and Laurie, where, you see that scene where his face just seems to just materialize out of the darkness. And it works so well without him actually exhibiting, magic powers or anything like that. And so it just feeds into the power of the less is more aspect of the film, which which I think has got so many lessons for anyone wanting to tell their stories. And there's ways to do it, even when you don't have the money you probably wish you had to do this or that, and you might be better off not having to do that when you figure out how to navigate through these areas here. And horror is one of those genres that offers these opportunities, and you can see a lot of people start out in that, and it's a good reason for it. So all of that comes together, and of course, ultimately, Loomis shoots Michael Myers. He falls, and so how could he possibly survive? He's shot several times, and he just gets up and walks away, apparently. So, oh, yeah, he's not just some normal guy. It's not just a serial killer, an escaped maniac and all that. No, there's something else to it. And then, of course, again, with the themes, is just showing you the different areas that you'd already seen where the murders took place, and it's Michael's breathing getting louder and louder and all that. And then, then eventually the music and whatnot, cementing that this was the boogeyman, as the movie asks. Yes, it was the boogeyman. So, very powerful film. It's easy to see why this was a breakout film for John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis, and because it's crafted well, despite whatever limitations it had. It utilizes what it does have, and it has a very powerful presentation of horror and fear, especially because it's unknown and there's things you don't really know. The sequel that he produced and was against it because it was supposed to be a series of anthology films, and they only got to do one of that, which was The Season of the Witch, which is a completely separate film. It's what they originally wanted to do. The Halloween films after that, I don't really care about. I've watched quite a bit of them, and they all kind of blur together. I don't think any of them match up to what the original was. The second one I'm okay with. There's a lot of things that I like. I kind of like how they worked to make it seem like it really did pick up where the last one left off. The business of Laurie Strode being his sister, it's not too. But you see, that's part of the problem. Is like, because when you compare this to the remake that Rob Zombie did, where he explains way too much, to where Michael Myers is just a serial killer in a lot of ways, and then it ends in the same way. Oh, he gets shot, and well, how did he get up and go if he's just a guy, Well, whereas his family was, messed up and all this stuff, and he was, a kid, had a hard time in school, and it just drove him into the evil bastard that he becomes. It explains too much of it, and it takes away the mystique and the more scarier aspects of the unknown and mystery of Michael Myers that the original film does. So the second one following up and saying, oh, well, he pursues Laurie because that's his long lost little sister. And but there again, it's not as bad as what the zombie film does, but and I understand it's like the first film. It's just, well, he's got his mother's gravestone at one of the crime scenes at one of the murders he did, and it's like, oh, like he's sending a message to Laurie or something. And I can understand where you might conclude that, but again, as a standalone film, I think it fits in with just the mystery, and his motives remain somewhat unknown. You can guess at it and all of that, but that's about it, and it adds to the horror of the character. There are films that try to do this, I guess, or they get lazy and say it like this. They don't explain their plots and whatnot. But in this case, it worked, and just it all came together and how it's crafted. So, Halloween is one of the all-time greats, and certainly an early achievement for a young filmmaker that John Carpenter was when he made this horror classic. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness, so many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.